My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. My partner and I have been in a relationship for 5 years, living together for 4. Recently my partner came home having had a short meeting with a financial advisor, and was really eager to talk about our financial future WRT savings goals, life plans, timelines for saving up a deposit for a house, etc. This is a conversation I've been trying to have for years with him, so you'd think great, right? I should be really happy we're finally there. But I'm not. Talking about us going for a meeting with a financial advisor and starting to build towards our future together has given me really cold feet about the relationship. I think part of it is why now? I've been trying to talk to him about this for a really long time. With renewed efforts at the start of this year when I landed my first full-time salaried position and was working out my budget / personal savings goals. Just 4 months ago he wouldn't have a conversation about it. But now that the financial advisor has said the same things, it's obviously something we should be doing and I should just jump on board with. I think if the advice was particularly different to what I'm already planning, I'd be less annoyed. But the advice is the same. There's a certain type of savings account you can start in the UK specifically for saving up for a house. And I've been talking about planning to open one once I'm full-time employed for literally 3 years. And he brought it up like this new, novel idea I'd never heard of. It makes me wonder if he's ever listened to anything I've ever said. He's always been more frightened of commitment / taking the next step. And I've driven that for the majority of our relationship. Become official / exclusive? I pushed for it. Move in together? I pushed for it. Start a joint account for household costs? Me move into a bigger place and buy our own furniture? My call. And every step of the way he's against it, and I have to convince him why it's the right decision. I've tried to have this financial future talk for a long time, and also the talk about mapping out what our future plans are together. But he's never wanted to have it. I guess I feel a lot of resentment that he's finally ready to talk about this because someone else has told him it's a good idea. It also brings up a lot of worries I've had about the future that might have been sitting under the surface for a while. Like the marriage and kids talk, I've always been clear about what I want, and he's always vaguely agreed with me. But trying to talk to him about time scales for it is like pulling teeth and always turns into an argument. It's not like I'm saying you have to propose now or I'm leaving or anything. It's literally just stuff like, ideally I'd like to be thinking about engagement and buying a house by 28, and married looking to have kids by 30. So he's literally got like half a decade. But we can't have that conversation because he shuts down / gets annoyed / feels pressured. And I have no idea what he wants from the future because he won't tell me. There's a lot of resentment in this post, and I feel the need to clarify that I love him. He's my best friend and our day-to-day life is a dream. But I always feel like I'm dragging him into a future he doesn't want. And that he doesn't really trust / listen to me as an equal partner, until someone else tells him the same things I've been trying to say. I don't want that to be my future. I want someone who has these conversations with me and is excited about taking the next step. This feels like it has been one of the biggest underlying issues in our relationship that we've never been able to address. He doesn't ever really seem to listen to / consider me and often prioritizes his relationships with others. It's like he's expecting that I'll always just be there until he's ready, and that's not a very nice feeling to have. I'm not really sure where to go from here. I guess my big question is, how do I move past this resentment into a productive conversation about goals / expectations? I would like to be excited that he's finally ready to take this step together, but I just feel annoyed and uncertain. I would also like to address the issues of not feeling like a priority once and for all, since previous attempts haven't been successful. So I suppose my other question is, how do I make our communication better so that we can actually talk about these things and come up with a plan to fix them? I have 2 kids, Clark and Kent. While they have the same father, only one of them is biologically my child. They were born within 6 months of each other. The boys are currently 6, and for various reasons I have full custody of both of them. I didn't speak to anyone in my family for several years, and we got back in touch in 2019. Due to the boys' ages, my family know I couldn't have carried both, unless I have the gestation period of a hamster or the longest labor ever. I have explained to them how this all came to be, but in my explanation I neglected to tell them which was my biological child. Due to my ex having a type, the other woman looked enough like me that the boys could pass for twins. Same dark hair, blue eyes, pale skin, and both cleft chins and dimples. My brother jokes that they look like tiny supermen. People who know them refer to them as twins because aside from a few minor differences, they're practically identical. Frankly, if they were closer in age and I'd had full custody of both from the time they were born, I suspect I would have mixed them up a lot as babies. Shortly before Clark's birthday last year, my mum asked if she could see Clark's birth certificate. I asked why, and she said she wanted to know the exact time he was born, so I told her. She asked if she could see the certificate anyway. I asked why. She said she just wanted to check. I said I'm his mother, I know when he was born. Then she asked the same thing about Kent and we went through the same conversation all over again. Mum eventually admitted that she just wanted to see the birth mother's name on each certificate, which isn't even how that works, and I told her as much. This led to an argument where my stance was that I'm their mother, biology is irrelevant. Mum says if biology is irrelevant then it's not a big deal to tell her which of them is biologically mine. I said if she's so hung up on biology, then clearly it's a big deal to her and I don't want it to be a big deal. Especially as the boys themselves don't know. Mum feels this is incredibly selfish, narcissistic, and overall wrong. She feels that if biology isn't such a big issue, then I should have no problem telling her whether Clark or Kent is my biological son. And that accusing her of potential favoritism or something similar with her bio-grandchild is an unfair judgment, with no actual reasoning to it. My boyfriend agrees that I shouldn't tell anyone, at least until my sons have decided for themselves if they want to know and want other people to know. But my entire family agree with Mom that I'm being unreasonably selfish and that my actions now are more likely to cause issues than Mom's potential actions later. Let me start off by saying my son, Adam, is 22 years old. Back when my ex-wife, Tori, and I were trying for kids, we found out that I was infertile. We decided we'd adopt, then about 4 months later my ex-wife is pregnant. I was thrilled because I thought maybe the doctor made a mistake. No, I was wrong. My ex-wife cheated on me and I didn't find out until 20 years later. Tori told me 2 years ago that she cheated on me. And we did a paternity test to make sure, and well, he's not my biological son. My ex and I divorced a few weeks later. Ever since my son found out the truth, he wanted to meet his biological father. He did, and they started to become really close. It hurt me much more than I thought it would. He's an adult, he can make his own decisions, but it hurt really bad. They started to bond really well, and all of a sudden Adam became really distant from me. It's been like this for almost a year and a half. I tried to text him to make plans for dinner and he said he's busy with Chris, biological father. I tried numerous times to connect with him by calling and texting, but he never made plans aside from like a meal every other month. We used to do stuff every other week, but it's been completely different since he found out about Chris. I couldn't stand it. My son, who I raised since he was a baby, treated me like I didn't matter. Anytime we'd actually have plans, he would still be cold and distant. What I mean by that is became much more defensive of his personal life. I'd ask him how classes or friends were and he'd just say they were fine but never go deeper than that. He also changed his major from econ to computer science and didn't even mention it to me until a year later. I told him how much he was hurting me because of how distant he was and he apologized and said he'd do better. He never did. I told him numerous times and he never changed. He was still distant. What was the final straw for me was the phone conversation I had with him last week. He said he was going to change his last name to Chris because he liked it so much and because they were close. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him this, I can't believe you are going to do this. That's really disappointing to me. If you decide to change your last name, go ahead, but if you do that, then I'm no longer your father and I don't want to be involved in your life. He hung up on me. I didn't even bother reaching out because I know he wouldn't respond. I stand by what I said. I meant every word and still do. The last name change to me means he no longer views me as a father and views Chris as his, despite the fact he's 22. My family told me I'm being unreasonable, meanwhile my best friends think it's reasonable. After I found out about Chris, I took a couple of days and didn't speak to my ex-wife or Adam. They didn't contact me. I didn't contact them. I needed a break. A lot of you are asking for a deeper meaning behind this, and I think I finally figured out why he's been so cold. A few months before my wife told us the truth, we were in a very long argument. His grandma, my mother, left a big inheritance for him that I am fully in charge of. Enough to pay for college and have enough wiggle room to not stress all the time about it. After a semester of university, he started dating this girl. He was head over heels in love with her. I never met the girl, so I have zero clue how she felt about the relationship. Suddenly, after a few months of dating, Adam asked me for about $3,000 to be deposited into his account from the inheritance. I already paid for the semester, so this was odd to me. I asked Adam why he needed the money. He said his girlfriend was having trouble paying for her tuition and asked my son to help. I told him no because it seemed to me that she was treating him like a piggy bank. He spent over $1,000 on her in just under a few months. He would constantly talk about how he loved going shopping with her so he could buy her things. To me, she was just after my son's inheritance, and I was right. What I said to him was basically this: Adam, you haven't been dating this girl for very long at all, and for me to give you that much money just to spend on her after a few months doesn't sit well with me. That's the money your grandmother left you for your college career, not hers. If you two were more serious, then I would think about it, but I'm not giving you that much money to just give your girlfriend. Turns out my guess was right, and she was after his money. They broke up shortly after and have had an on-again, off-again relationship ever since. He was upset with me, but he eventually got over it after a few months. Then we found out about my ex's affair. I don't know if that's the real reason he's so cold. That was a huge argument that went on for weeks until she left him.